Hi, welcome to the first installment of Classic Board Game Rewind. It's a series that's going to be about board games that are either been around for a tremendous long time or games that are out of print and that maybe you see on eBay and maybe you're not sure if you want to spend the extra money to get it and know nothing about it. Now, today's game is an all-time classic. It is the game BattleTech. BattleTech is a game of robots and tanks and infantry. It's a classic game that's been around for about 30 years. So we're going to go through and we're going to talk a little bit about the history of the game. We're going to talk about how the game particularly works, and we're just going to break down and talk about BattleTech itself and where it's going and where it will be. So let's get started and let's just talk about first the history of BattleTech. BattleTech is a war gaming and military science fiction franchise launched originally by FASA Corporation in 1984. It was acquired by WizKids in the year 2000 and now is currently owned since 2003 by Tops, or / as they call it, Catalyst Games. The original game, BattleTech, was originally named Battle Droids by Jordan Weissman and Ross Babcock III. And it's grown into so many different expansions. There's been TV cartoons about it, video games, and it's just expanded into novels and television series, collectible card games. It's grown and it continues to this day to be a game that is very passionate by its devout followers. It's a game that is pretty much very intensive in the fact that you control everything with your mech. Now, mechs are controlled by the player. You can have one mech or you can have 4 mechs, which are considered lances, and that is what a battle group is. Now, a mech in the traditional classic BattleTech game is broken down to where you can actually hit the parts. You can hit arms, the chest, the legs. It all depends on your position and your movement and how you fire your weapons. Movement also within the mech is your mech warrior. Your mech warrior is the human that actually drives the particular device. He also can be wounded and hurt and takes different types of damage due to life support systems being blown out, getting headshots and such. Particular pilot is controlled with a gunnery skill, his piloting skill. Of course, you can name him. You can actually make this pretty much a role-playing game. This was almost like a science fiction counteract to Dungeons and Dragons in a lot of ways, because you can there's actually a role-playing aspect of it, but for the most part, for the core crew or the core following, cult following, and I believe it is a cult following, the main thing was about the robots. Now, the mechs, excuse me. I'll get shot for that. One of the ways that you can build up your lance is everything was pretty much judged by tonnage. Particularly, let's just talk about the Jaeger mech here. He's 65 tons. So you would add up your tonnage and the other side would add up their tonnage. It didn't mean it was balanced, but it was pretty much even because of the tonnage and the different types of mechs that you could possibly use. There were mechs that were 100 tons, like our old friend here, the Atlas, which is probably one of the more popular mechs. And I believe, oh God, I forgot who this is, but forgive me. I don't have the name in front of me, but this was another big mech. Here we have some medium mechs that we're just going to kind of show a couple of things and how things work. a lot of the things were you just couldn't go in guns a-blazing, okay? There was a thing called heat, and you were allowed a certain number of heat sinks. If you went over that heat sinks, it would minus off some of your movement. You could cause permanent shutdowns and damage, but sometimes desperate measures cause for desperate actions. And modifying and being and managing your heat was a big part of this game. Movement is another thing, that everything that you do has some kind of counterbalance in how you perform. Now, your weapons were always very incredible things, because you had weapons on your arms, or maybe on your shoulders, or on your right arms, and everything was pretty much spelled out for you, and still is to this day, you know, on the sheet, and it showed you the ranges and things. Some things were good at long range, some things were good at medium range, some things were just only good in short range, and everything was played on a hex base system. Now, later on they came out with a book called Total War, where they put everything all into one book, and we do have that. I do have that book. We're not going to talk too much about Total War. Total War is the all-in-all encompassing book that talked about the tanks that you can have in this, which I didn't break any out, but I can. As a matter of fact, if you give me moments of time, you can take a look at some of the stuff that you would have. You would have anti-aircraft, or you would have copters that you could put up. And there were hovercrafts. All these had different stats for them. Tanks. Ooh, tanks. All these have different stats, and in Total Warfare they squished it all into one big book, which is fine and dandy, and made things easier. Some people like different versions of the game, the first or the second version, and of course we have now this introductory box version, where after 25 years they put together a very beautiful box set. The miniatures weren't that great, but then all of a sudden they did a reprinting of it, and they improved the miniatures and made those even better. So it is out there, it's still available. Trying to get some of the pewter mechs is kind of hard, but also very all the different variants and things like that. It made it a complete game. Even the terrain that you walked on had penalties and pluses. Elevations gave you a certain amount of firing bonuses, or rough terrain slowed you down. Heavy terrain made it harder to be hit. A lot of the weapons, some of them only had a certain amount on that particular mech. Like you may only have 10 shots in your autocannon. So you would have to account for that and make every shot count. The game itself was ran off 2d6. Okay? Pretty much everything was rolled off at 2d6. And most of the time your pilot was your most important thing, because your base number started with your pilot. Now moving, you can walk, like this particular mech here can walk 4 spaces, or he can run 6. But there was a penalty with running. If you walked even, you had a particular penalty in shooting. It was called movement, and it would be -1 depending on that particular mech. If you walked, you add +1 to your dice. So say you have a pilot skill of 4, okay, and this guy walked. He walked 4 spaces. You would add +1 to that, which would be 5. Then you would take the range of your weapon and how far it was, or how far your target was away, and you would add particular bonus. This guy is particularly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay? And if your target had moved, that has to be taken into account. So let's just say he moved 3 hexes, so that would make it up to to 6. Then anything in the medium range, if he wanted to fire his autocannon particularly, okay, and it was it would be in the medium range. The medium range would add a bonus of +2. So at 6 you would be 8. So you would have to roll an 8 or better on 2d6 in order to even hit this guy. Then you would roll on a crit table, on a table, to see where the hit was. And then you would roll on the crit table to see where it actually did damage, and then you would apply your damage. So say you had fired an autocannon here. It does 5 damage, and you hit his left arm. You would mark off the boxes. If you marked off all the boxes, let's just say for instance, whoop, up here would have been, so it would have been 5, and then you hit it a couple more times, he would have lost the ability to use this left arm. And if you kept hitting that left arm in the internal structure, you have a chance of everything going completely blowing up and blowing the arm off. And then when you go back at the end of the game, you would actually, if you were playing the role-playing version of it, you would actually have to pay to reinstall the arm or repair your mech. But firing all your weapons, like I said, does cause a lot of heat, and you would check off your heat and then have a chance to dissipate the heat. There was death from above, there was close combat, and a lot of other things that come into it. A lot of times if you went over the heat, your heat levels, you would actually shut down, and you have to watch your heat because your heat dissipates. That's why you have heat sinks. Some mechs were fast moving and made to skirt around. Other mechs were just big heavy tanks, like we said, the Atlas, that could just sit here and just say, go ahead, shoot whatever you want at me, I'm going to hit you with some of my lasers and take you completely out. So this was always a very, very, very fascinating game, a very in-depth game, and a game that you would actually really sink your teeth into. Now, with this series, not only do I just want to talk about the game, I want to do a playthrough of the game. But the reason I'm not going to do the playthrough on classic BattleTech is because we're going to talk about something at the end here, which we're at, and that is Alpha Strike. Alpha Strike is the newest component in the BattleTech universe. Okay, it simplifies some of the stuff, but classic BattleTech people like it so far. From what I heard, it's been very positive. You know, you've got your hardcore guys that like to do the pen and paper stuff. This actually has some cards, which I'll show you how they all work out. And I'm actually going to be doing a playthrough in about a week or two and reviewing this Alpha Strike and how it works with all the mechs and all the boards. You can use the boards, there are rules for the boards, but also you can just use a ruler. Everything is converted over in 2 inches, and some of the mechanisms are very interesting. So while we talked about, you know, BattleTech itself and part of its universe, which I'd like to talk about even further, you know, it was amazing what they did with the years from 3020, and they built this whole universe that just kept on going and going. I mean, just an amazing thing. But the thing I really wanted to do was just show you what classic BattleTech was about, because what we're going to do our playthrough on is, and give everybody a chance to see, is BattleTech Alpha Strike and how it works with the old models, the boards, and also without the boards. So I like to do a couple videos, but not beat the BattleTech thing to death. So, in closing, if you have a chance, if this is something that may interest you, and you do like micromanagement, this is the game for you. This is the epitome of micromanagement. It's taking your mech and just being very methodical in how you use it and how you adapt it to to your particular battle. You could do big battles, you can do one-on-one battles, you can do epic battles. There's no end to what you can do. You can have structures, buildings, different terrain, snow, everything. Everything has some kind of modifier to it. I suggest that you get the introductory set. It really gives you 26 models to start with, which is more than enough to get going. It gives you beginner rules, a quick start set, and it gives you a beautiful book with the entire history of BattleTech. And this is available. I know that they have them at Cool Stuff right now. If you get a chance, you know, go get them. They're just a fantastic set. So with that said, we'll talk to you soon. Next week we're going to be doing Blood Bowl. Blood Bowl next Monday. That we're actually going to do a playthrough, as well as talk about the history of Blood Bowl. So I hope you enjoy this. This is the first one. I'm sure I'm going to make some adjustments to it. Please leave your comments whether you like it or not, and let me know what you think and what I could do to make it a little bit better. I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll talk to you soon.